Can you imagine at your workplace if a report came out saying that your boss was guilty of harassment, of bullying, and that other bosses were enabling, even encouraging that aggressive behavior? Well, that's the report that came out. That's the findings that came out from the Integrity Commissioner on Councillor Terry Whitehead's behavior. Yeah, you heard the words: harassing, bullying, and also that it created a chill at City Hall and did lasting and significant damage. But wait, there's more. It wasn't just that this particular boss was doing this, it's that the other bosses around the table, council, were seen to be enabling, if not encouraging it. What is going on? How can we allow that to be happening? City Council works for us. We pay for the salaries of city staff, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they are working in an environment, in a culture that isn't toxic, that isn't letting harassment and bullying happen. And yet that's what's happening at Hamilton City Hall. That's the finding against Councillor Terry Whitehead. And we don't even know if the rest of council will even accept the report, or if they're going to circle the wagons again around the councillor and around this toxic bullying behavior that's meant to intimidate. And I'm sick of it. And on the same time that this report came out about Councillor Terry Whitehead's behavior, we also hear of a big report, a big study that was done across all the wards in this city, talking to residents and asking you how you feel about the leadership of council, how you feel about how issues are being handled in Hamilton. And you know what? This report was not done by the city. No, they're not the ones asking these questions. It was done by a group of citizens at iElect who raised the money and did the legwork to find out how you feel about how you're being served by this council. So really, it's a tale of two reports: a report on bullying and harassment, and a report on how you feel about all of it. And I'm so pleased on this week's OShow to do a special presentation on the findings of the iElect report and to get the opinion of my guests on that Integrity Commissioner report that came out, that damning report about Councillor Terry Whitehead. Joining me now on the OShow, I'm so pleased to have back on the program the co-founder of iElect, Graham Crawford. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Laura. Great to be back.
Well, Graham, you are coming back with not just opinions, you're coming back with some real research, and I can't wait to dig into this. But before we get into all of that, I want our other panelist to join us because he knows a thing or two about research. Dr. Ameil Joseph from McMaster University. Welcome to the OShow again, Ameil.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Ameil, I want to ask you right off the top, before we get into the findings of the iElect survey, which I know are comprehensive and you've started to look at them and analyze them, what was your reaction when you saw the Integrity Commissioner's report about the behavior of not just Councillor Terry Whitehead, but of the councillors around that table who, and I quote, enable, if not encourage, bad behavior?
When I read the report, I felt that it all sounded all too familiar. It was relating to a specific incident at council, but over the years, I'll say, over the last 5 years, as someone who has helped citizens and colleagues and allies prepare reports and delegate to council, we've learned to approach those events as one to fear almost. And we felt antagonized, we felt interrogated, and often we're raising issues of inadequate housing or homelessness, as well as issues with racism. When the original pitches were presented for the Hamilton Anti-Racism Resource Center, a number of us left some of those initial asks meetings with to presentations to council and delegations feeling humiliated. We felt that it was a general climate of disrespect. So I think in this case you have a report on one particular incident, but I could tell you there's a lot of community members, a lot of community leaders, a lot of organizational leaders that could tell you that they've experienced the same kind of thing from the same kind of person, the same exact person.
Well, in fact, Emil, since you raised that, there was a community leader, Kojo Damte of the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion. And I think it's really important that people understand this. The same counselor who was found to have been harassing and bullying of staff in that now famous meeting, or I guess I should say infamous meeting, when City Council used the Integrity Commissioner to go after citizen Cameron Kretsch, which was never supposed to be the function of the Integrity Commissioner. And they actually found against Cameron Kretsch. That councillor, Terry Whitehead, went out on Twitter and tweeted to Kojo Damte and effectively said, be interesting, let's see whether or not these powers of the Integrity Commissioner can be used with HCCI, effectively suggesting that, we should all watch out here, we activists and community leaders, because they have the power of the Integrity Commissioner. So when I saw that Terry Whitehead actually got a damning report from the Integrity Commissioner that his behavior was called out as being harassing and bullying and causing significant harm to city culture, to City Hall, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, some poetic justice was served. Because no, actually, the Integrity Commissioner did what it was supposed to do, finally, and call out the behavior of one of these councillors. So Graham, what did you think of the Integrity Commissioner's findings? And do you think council's going to even do anything with it, or are they going to continue to protect their own?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how they react. Certainly when I read it, my reaction, it was kind of jaw-dropping, because it really laid out in great detail what Terry had done. I happened to have watched that meeting, and Dr. Joseph is right. It was one incident that this report focused on, but it did speak to a pattern of behavior. But let's be careful here. I mean, Terry deserves everything he's getting in this report and more, but he's not alone. When we look in that mirror of bad behavior, we better see more than Terry's face, because we've all witnessed this. This is like Laura, it's like a still photo of a 10-year-long documentary. There's the Terry Whitehead bit on that day, September 11th, 2020. And then there's 10 years of this crap that we've been watching, the kind of behavior. Dr. Joseph is right. I've seen it. I watched the health department meeting and public health. And I saw what people did to the delegates who were simply asking for representation. I heard what Mayor Fred Eisenberger said to them and said afterwards. I've seen and heard what Fred Eisenberger has said about Cameron Kretsch. I've watched Sam Marula. I've watched other councillors. I've watched Lloyd Ferguson say things. I've also seen councillors, let's also be clear, not every councillor is reflected in that mirror, nor should they. I've seen councillors who have been beaten up by their colleagues, and that is utterly inappropriate, yet they support each other. And Laura, let me just say one last thing to bring this to light for people, because if you didn't watch the meeting, you don't know this. Ward 8 Councillor John Paul Danko was the chair of that particular meeting, and they were talking about the Aberdeen Road Diet. He did a very good job, in my opinion, a very professional job. He was very measured, balanced, checked in with clerks, was clear on procedures. And Terry Whitehead, after he lost his mind for about 90 minutes, then challenged the chair. And that's a formal procedure. That's not just a phrase. It's a formal procedure. It then has to be voted on. Was the chair wrong? Was Terry wrong? And he got supported. Terry won the vote. That says it all to me. And John Paul Danko then just had to wear it. But he eventually ejected Terry from the meeting. And that's important too. Terry kept crossing the line. He attacked citizen delegates as well, Ned Nolan in particular. I know Ned, he's a lawyer, so he's used to sort of tough talk. But I called him right afterwards and I said, I don't know how you can, but that guy needs to be controlled. And this is a small measure, but at least it is a measure. But now we've got 15 of his colleagues who are going to talk about this very shortly.
Well, I have to say just a couple of more points on this before we dive into what the residents of Hamilton think about all things council and local politics and services. But Ameil, one of the things that I read in the Integrity Commissioner's report, which I think everyone listening to this podcast or watching this show should just read through it. Get to the part where it talks about the findings. It'll blow your mind. One of the things it said, Ameil, is that for all of the municipal governance they have watched, as an integrity, the people working in the Integrity Commissioner's office, normally other members of the municipal council would stand up to it, would interject, would not allow this bullying of people, this cross-examination, this aggressive way that Councillor Whitehead was behaving. But they didn't. They are complicit in the behavior. And then when someone tried to, put it to a point, who was right, Terry or the chair, John Paul Dankel, who was trying to rein in Terry, Terry won the vote. So it's not as though council and the integrity report says this. It's not just that they were passively sitting there, right? They enable, if not encourage, this bad behavior. And you made the comment that you felt, or some people who had delegated felt humiliated in front of council. That sounds to me like it's an abusive relationship that we have with the city council, or that they have with citizens, or at least citizens who are trying to change things or trying to raise issues or trying to, speak up to them. I mean, are we at the point, Ameil, where we're kind of in this abusive relationship and they can treat us like this and we're just supposed to accept it? I mean, I know it's a tough question to answer, but if this is not seen in other municipal governments, why are we putting up with it here in Hamilton? How did it get like this?
There's got to be a way to put a stop to it. And I think this is one of many steps necessary. I think, you raised the point earlier, a word in the report, chilling. I think that is definitely what people have come to experience in those council meetings and when delegating. It is intimidation. It's the kind of experience that tells the public that they're not welcome there. They're not welcome to raise any criticism or any proposal for fear of being humiliated or interrogated and mistreated. That kind of sentiment, that feeling of disrespect, is also something we can talk about that showed up in the IELECT report. But it's a widely appreciated event or experience that people have when trying to raise things in city council. And that's the kind of conduct that is antagonistic to democratic process and to participation. It's the kind of thing that gets in the way of progressive change, progressive policy change. It stands in the way of listening to residents. And if that's your job as a city councillor, everyone around that room or in that table on city council should be speaking up about it.
Well, well said, Ameil. And there was someone on Twitter who said, well, wait a sec, isn't this sort of par for the course with Hamilton Council? Didn't one councillor shove a journalist? Didn't another councillor threaten a small business in another community? I mean, the intimidation is not just restricted to those poor city staffers, many of whom reach out to me over the years and who I'm friends with, and past city staffers. It's not just them who are bullied. It is also sometimes journalists and sometimes, activists or other residents or business owners, whatever. The point is, this idea of entitlement and abuse of authority or power, I don't know what makes them think that this is the way they should be doing their jobs. I don't know why they think they can get away with the way they treat some of us. And trust me, a lot of us have stories, right? But it's not about us. It's about their behavior. It's about the staff that work for them and don't have the freedom of just, switching something on the outside. They work for them. They have to, their careers are dependent on these people. They're their bosses. It's tough enough for those of us on the outside to deal with some of the crap that we get, but it's nothing compared to having to go to those people. And that's your employment. That's how you feed your family. And I have heard stories about reports getting so washed down that by the the time they get in front of council, they've lost all of the sort of ideas that would have fixed the problem, because the councillors didn't want to be embarrassed by what was coming out. So here these professionals feel like they can't help the city, that they look like they're useless because their reports are so changed before they get to council. I mean, Graham, this is a huge thing. And you looked at the cultural survey, and we'll get to the ILEC survey in just a minute, gentlemen, but I don't want to let them off on this. There was a cultural survey done years ago, Graham. I remember you on the OShow, and you as a management consultant globally took a look at those findings. And I think you told me at the time that it was some of the worst scores that you had ever seen. So I know you can't be surprised by this Integrity Commissioner's report, but how could we go from that report coming out years ago to us still being in a situation where councillors feel like they can intimidate and bully city staff?
Well, Laura, you're absolutely right. That survey, those cultural survey results I saw some years back, in fact, I said were the worst I had ever seen. And I had seen many of them. And they used the same instrument that I was very familiar with that is used internationally. It was shocking how bad it was. So now fast forward, I don't know what 6, 7 years, something like that. If I read this Integrity Commissioner's report correctly, the staff person complained, was encouraged by senior management to work through HR, and HR then, I guess, put forward the complaint to the Integrity Commissioner. Now, I don't know the details there, but I'll tell you this, I would like to see a little more action, or an overt action by the city manager. It's as if Jeanette Smith wasn't part of this. So let's get HR to do it. This staffer needs to be protected. This staffer has a right not to be treated in a shockingly abusive manner. I saw it, and that's the stuff that was recorded. You can still watch it. The video is still available. But of course, Whitehead was doing this stuff behind the scenes as well, but he's not alone. So the fact that we haven't had a single word said by the city manager, I think is disgusting. This is not some rumor. This isn't some little incident where somebody thought somebody said something that might have been offensive. This was overt and lasting. Terry Whitehead, based on the report, said that this city staffer was fired from his previous job. He was not. He told staff that the guy was fired so that they would think less of him. And he said his job is on the line, quote. That's from the Integrity Commissioner's report. His job is on the line. That's threatening and abusive, not only behavior, but words as well. I don't think the city of Hamilton has done a good job handling this. I do not think the city manager has done a good job. They're hiding behind HR, and HR hasn't said anything. So if we think we had a cultural problem before, if you think this kind of reaction from the city manager and from human resources, and they're allowed to say something, and they've said nothing, then this culture, this toxic culture, where we have great people leaving, they're bailing out, they're getting out of the way because they can't stand it. And it's a long list, and it's continuing. I mean, I don't want to be too cute here, Laura, but this is why we need new leadership for a better Hamilton. We need to change the players.
Well, we do, because as you mentioned, the city manager from that last cultural report is now the city manager at the City of Toronto. Some senior staff have also left and gone, and some great city staffers that I know who are further down the list, maybe in authority and power, but excellent at their jobs, have also left. We saw, an exodus in the transportation department around the handling of LRT. It is not a good place to work. We have the numbers to support it. Now we have a big integrity report, and it is damning. And, damn council, if they brush this under the rug after the attention they gave to the Integrity Commissioner's findings against Cameron Kretsch. I mean, they went after a citizen and had plenty to say about it. And there was lots of media coverage of that. So, a pox on all the houses, whether it's council or media or whoever, who don't give as much attention, if not more, to this integrity report on a sitting city councillor than the one that was done on a resident. I'll be watching really closely, because I think that speaks volumes, that council and the mayor can say a lot when an integrity complaint is filed against a citizen for effectively nothing. but there's a huge one coming out about bullying and harassment and creating significant and lasting damage to the culture of City Hall. That's what the Integrity Commissioner's report says, Hamilton. It's bad. And any other city would have this wall-to-wall front page for a week. Well, here on the OShow, they would. And I'm going to have Joey Coleman, and who knows a whole lot about all of this, and Margaret Shimba on the OShow soon to talk about this in more depth. But gentlemen, I was just about to ask you, what is it that they're so afraid of that they have? Because we know bullies are motivated by fear and insecurity. What are they so afraid of that they need to bully staff who work for them, that they need to bully journalists and bully activists? I was going to ask it kind of rhetorically, but I realized you guys have the answer. You actually have the data of what they're so afraid of. And I think what they're so afraid of is the fact that residents see it. They see them. They see the behavior and they see the impact on city services. And I'm guessing, Graham and Ameil, that you found that the citizens who were surveyed by iElect probably aren't really pleased with the way things are going, but I want to hear from you. So Graham, what did the iElect residents survey say?
Well, Laura, it said a lot. And there's a lot of information there. And Dr. Joseph has been helping to review it and analyze it. Go through the findings, because we have both data, we have analytics, but we also then have, well, what does it mean? What do the numbers mean? But just by way of context for people, over 2,000 Hamiltonians responded to a 24-question survey. Every ward was represented. And one of the questions we asked people was, did you vote in the last election? And 92% of them said they did. So the people who filled in this survey are generally, one would say they're engaged residents. At least they're engaged enough to go out and vote every year. And our municipal voter turnout, as you know, is not terrific. We hope to change that. But more to the point, in terms of what people told us, we structured the survey based on the 6 elements of iElect. So infrastructure, economy, leadership, environment, community, and transportation. And what they told us was they were terribly dissatisfied in the areas of leadership and community engagement. I mean, when I say terribly dissatisfied, I'm talking in like 93% dissatisfied. It's a shocking number, and consistent across all wards, by the way. So it's not like, oh yes, it's those crazy, dissatisfied downtown, cabal activists or whatever the hell council seems to think we are, or Jason Farr and his paranoia about, oh, they're after me. Well, I got to tell you, I got news for you, Jason, and the others, including Whitehead. People are very unhappy, and they're specific in what they're unhappy about. What's interesting, I think one of the takeaways, though, is the number one statement that people are most dissatisfied with, though, followed very closely, mind you, with 4 leadership statements, was the statement that said it's easy to find affordable housing in Hamilton. Affordable place to live in Hamilton. Sorry, I should be clear. It's an overwhelmingly negative point. And we also received over half the people who filled in the survey also provided written comments. We've gone through every one of those as well. And they really amplify what the numbers say as well. So to net it out, we have a group of people, Hamiltonians, who are saying, we're very dissatisfied with leadership and community engagement. We are less dissatisfied, although it's not like it's the other extreme where 93% just love the condition of our roads. But oddly enough, it's the infrastructure stuff, the hard stuff that is obvious where we spend money. They're less dissatisfied. In other words, they're more satisfied. I'll stop there but I do want to come back to, what does that mean if they're really down on leadership and community engagement and not so down on the hard dollar stuff like roads and conditions of parks, sidewalks, that sort of stuff.
Ameil?
Yeah, some of the stuff that stood out to me in the report were the overwhelming dissatisfaction with the feeling that leadership was being transparent and honest with residents, that there was a lack of accountability, as well, an overwhelming majority of folks shared that they felt that they didn't have the respect of leadership. They didn't feel respected. Those two things are the kinds of things that help us appreciate our earlier conversation around the Integrity Commissioner's report and Terry Whitehead. There's a widespread dissatisfaction with leadership's ability to be transparent and accountable in decision making, and the way they treat residents who raise critique, who raise analysis, who want to advocate for and contribute to change, the way that they feel disrespected. There was definitely, like Graham said, some components where people were satisfied, but mostly in relation to infrastructure and parks. But the housing affordability issue, affordable housing in Hamilton, is not new. It's something that we talk about constantly. And at the moment, there are ongoing struggles to raise awareness around the difficulties for folks to find housing. People right now are being evicted from encampments, people living in tents without housing. It's a constant battle to feel listened to and responded to in a way that doesn't also result in a situation where you feel disrespected for bringing it up, and the responses are not transparent, and there's no accountability in the responses, and that kind of stuff came through in the survey. So I feel like the survey will tell a broader population in Hamilton who are not directly involved in these kind of encounters on the day-to-day what is widely understood as hugely disappointing in terms of people's satisfaction with leadership.
Well, on the issue of accessibility to housing, we're going to have on next week's OShow the executive director of Indwell and some other people on the encampments to discuss that, because that is, as you said, from the ILEC resident survey, the number one issue in terms of a service that the city is to provide, and a high dissatisfaction with how it's being handled. There isn't affordability in our housing market in Hamilton. We've had issues with supply, issues with Hamilton housing and how it's been managed, and it really does fall under a municipal council leadership, or rather under municipal council, to provide housing for the people and to treat people with dignity and respect, and to not yank their tents away in a pandemic as the winter approaches, right? It's cruel. And we've seen some actions on that particular issue by council recently that are almost heartbreaking, comparing encampments to whack-a-mole, as these people are some kind of a sick game, was said by one of our councillors. So I take your point, Ameil, that on that particular issue, there's a high dissatisfaction. But the fact that right across all wards, there's a high dissatisfaction with leadership, I think that might come as a surprise to some councillors who think that they're mighty fine and mighty respected and doing a mighty damn good job all these 30 years in. So Graham, what does it mean that Hamiltonians are okay-ish on the way infrastructure is being dealt with, the hard stuff, but so dissatisfied with the leadership? I mean, what is that message to council if they could open their ears for one moment and hear?
Well, if they did open their ears and hear, they would hear that their people can see their poor leadership. The question is, maybe they should wise up and get out of the way. Can they really change their pattern of behavior for the past 10, 20, 33 years because people are saying, oh, we don't like the way you lead? Or do we just have to admit we've got the wrong leaders? We need different ones. Ideally, there'll be better ones. But of course, you don't know that until you change them. It's like any change. Anybody who works gets a new boss. But I want to give you two examples, just to put a number on these things. Statement number 17 in the survey. It says, council listens to the needs and opinions of Hamilton residents before making important decisions. 91% of residents are dissatisfied with
Wow.
council's behavior. 91%. Let me give you one more. Hamilton County, and this is question or statement number 12. Hamilton City Council is transparent, accountable, and demonstrates openness. 93% of respondents are dissatisfied with council's behavior. Now, I don't know how you learn your way out of that. I think you just have to admit you failed. I think you have to admit maybe you're in the wrong job. But what it also tells us, Laura, and Dr. Joseph alluded to this, to make people more satisfied, we don't need to spend more money. We just need to be better leaders. They're not complaining. I suppose it's possible that in the face of excellent leadership, maybe the infrastructure stuff would rise up in terms of level of dissatisfaction. But at the moment, it's way down the list. And I don't mean close, it's way down the list. We have a leadership problem in Hamilton, and we don't need 150 or $1 billion from the feds and the province to fix it. We need to change the players around the table. And October 24th of 2022 is the day we get a chance to do that. And between now and then, I would encourage people who are unhappy with the kind of leadership they're seeing, who believe they can offer better leadership, to start thinking about running, to start building a plan, to start talking to your friends and your neighbors and supporters, and look for ways to maybe help make this happen. And if you're not somebody who wants to do that, then be somebody who wants to support people like that. But we cannot keep going the way we're going. As a councillor has said, and Laura, you and I have mentioned this on the OShow any number of times, we are currently managing the city's decline. It has to stop.
It really is painful, all the things other cities have that we don't, simply because of the wasted time in this acrimonious, toxic climate, the incompetence of some of the councillors around that table, not to mention the stupid lawsuits that they get involved in, or the scandals they create that cost a fortune of our money to fix. We could go on and on. Sewergate seems to fit so many of these issues. But Ameil, let me ask you this. You're a researcher, you're a professor. Do you often see something where 91% and 93% of respondents agree on an issue? Or is this something that's significant that we should look at as a city and say, first of all, why did citizens have to ask these questions? You know, why doesn't the city ask residents how they feel? And secondly, what do you do with results like that? To Graham's point, are they incapable of leading and therefore we need new people for this city to get better? Or would you have some other solution for us, Ameil? I mean, what does this really mean from a research point of view?
I think, you know, those results are absolutely significant. They're not the kind of thing that you would discount when you have a sample size of 2,000 people across Hamilton, across all wards. And, you know, there was a lot of data to collect it. This report is quite high level, but there is an opportunity to kind of drill down to postal code level of analysis and to think about the population demographics at those levels to really get a sense of some of the differences, even though they might be small. You know, there was a widespread dissatisfaction with leadership in response to issues of the environment. And that was another really, really significant outlier in terms of dissatisfaction in the survey results. And I can tell you anecdotally that sentiment of dissatisfaction will vary depending on where you live and your proximity to some of these disasters in Hamilton, these environmental disasters that are ongoing. And I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity to do some of that analysis, to drill down as this work, of course, proceeds. I can tell you, well, after the violence at Hamilton Pride a couple of years ago, there was a series of delegations at City Council where people who were community members those who are serving hard to serve groups and marginalized groups and equity seeking and equity deserving groups came to delegate in favor of a multi-purpose community hub. At that meeting, a member of the LGBTQ plus community suggested to council that we can't approach these broken relationships without engaging respectfully with community members. And that begins with, the example given was not criminalizing members of the 2S LGBT plus community who stand up to hate groups when they're being attacked. And the mayor and Councillor Whitehead pounced on that person. It was one of the most disrespectful things I've ever seen. It's recorded and well known, but all of this, that example, I raise it because it is one that shows you the level of disrespect that people feel when they bring change, examples of change to council, when they bring suggestions to council, and the ways that they're treated coincide with a lack of accountability. And that was the kind of thing I came across in the survey. I think if we want progressive change in Hamilton, this survey will do a lot to communicate some of these broad sentiments of dissatisfaction, but also likely engage community in a way that kicks up some inertia, so that people come out and vote and people come out and run so that we can see better change in Hamilton. I would agree with Graham. It would be difficult to kind of train this out of or educate this out of folks when there is a culture of disrespect, a culture of a lack of accountability, a culture of bad listening. What you want in a city council is a place where you feel welcomed, a place where you feel heard, and a place where responses from experts and community leaders that think about the specifics of problems every day can result in influence. And right now, it almost feels like that kind of thing is impossible.
Wow, listening to it, I'm thinking if people from out of town are watching this, and I know we have some viewers now that we're more widely available, barrier free, they watch this, and it's almost as though we're sitting here begging, if you will, just to have the people we elect and pay to hear our concerns. And it's so absurd that when the city put out its own survey and thousands of people, 18,000 people responded, one of the councillors said, yeah, well, I'm not sure about the methodology of that survey because it's electronic or whatever, but my pals at the golf course said otherwise. So, that's what I'm going with. We had the sidewalk clearing issue, which is going to rear its ugly and dangerous head again very soon. A survey on that was done. And we had the mayor say, well, you know what, that's that, but here's this, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but it's that attitude of even when they ask what we think in some performative PR exercise, they don't even pretend to listen. They don't care, and they think they deserve these jobs, and they protect each other. And I swear to God, I'm gonna have an aneurysm if I see them talk about this IG report, or rather this Integrity Commissioner's report against Councillor Terry Whitehead, and try to slough it off as though it's nothing. I think he's said, it's too harsh. What the hell? It's terrible. And any boardroom who had one of the people around that table get a finding like that would be like, sorry, buddy, let's figure out your golden parachute, but you're out of here. I mean, the report says that it creates lasting and significant damage to the culture of City Hall. And the I Elect survey, to Dr. Ameil's analysis, is saying that that is a widespread understanding that the leadership at the city is highly dissatisfying, and people in every ward feel that way. So what are we sitting here begging for year after year, Graham? Why can't we get new leaders in these bleeping jobs?
Well, Laura, the question you just raised is it's the catalyst for I Elect Hamilton. We were so fed up that we couldn't just keep hoping, so we tried to do something. And I don't know how successful we'll be. Obviously, I wouldn't waste my time at this point in my life if I didn't think we could be successful and make a difference. I think we will. But let me just read to you two short statements, written comments from the survey that actually echo what you just said. But these are from people we know their names. I'm not giving their names. They will remain anonymous. But to Dr. Ameil's point, we have postal codes. So we will be doing this is just the first level report that people have access to now. The second level is a much deeper report, and we're doing that in partnership with the McMaster University research shop. They're very interested in this, and they're going to help us do a deep dive by postal code, which means we can do neighborhoods. They will also do a deep dive on the over 1,000 written comments. Here's two of them. I hate to put so many strongly disagrees. That was our survey had a 4-point rating, strongly disagree. I hate to put so many strongly disagrees here, but I just feel there's so much room for improvement. So fed up, but had to say it. Second one, these are just two. There's over 1,000 of these, and these are quite consistent. And by the way, we have word-specific written comments in the report. So if you live in Ward 8 or 3 or 14, if you look at our report, you'll see representative quotations from people in your ward. This is what they said. Anyway, here's the other one. I'm tired of the lifers on council. The arrogance, ignorance, and self-entitlement of some councillors has driven deep wedges in Hamilton. The wards fight against each other, and the mayor has damaged this city beyond imagination. So they're very consistent, by the way. I didn't just pick the two hot ones. There are much more strongly worded statements than that. I just picked those two.
Well, Graham,
we've got a problem.
We have a problem. Hamilton, we have a problem, but iElect is asking and listening to what citizens say that problem is. And I'm so glad, Dr. Ameil Joseph, that you're going to be doing further data analysis into what it means, even by neighborhood. I can't wait to have you back to hear the next layer of the research on this. And Graham Crawford, I'm so glad that you started iElect with Ryan Moran, because hope is not going to change anything. We need a plan. And that plan sounds like is to understand the problem so we can get people who have solutions to it to run for office and see if we can get the kind of leadership we deserve here in Hamilton. Thank you both so much for being here on the OShow. We'll have you back again. Everyone stay safe and please run or help somebody else who's running. We deserve better than this. Thanks, guys.